Nice to meet you all. Hi, Amsterdam. My name is Lior Lukov, Senior Program Manager from Azure Information Protection team. I hope that you're in the right session, Microsoft Information Protection. Before we begin, how many of you are actively using Azure Information Protection today? Please raise your hands. Very nice. I would say more than half of the audience here. So what we'd like to do today is basically go over the greatest and latest of Azure Information Protection and how it basically transforms into Microsoft Information Protection. Those of you who are less familiar with Azure Information Protection concept as a whole, we'll have an overview. We'll show you the main capabilities of Azure Information Protection, how it transformed into Microsoft Information Protection. And for those of you who are familiar with this product, you'll see basically what is unified labeling about, how Microsoft Information Protection would help you better utilize the product across various workloads within Microsoft and using third-party solutions as well. You'll learn how to better use and protect your data, your crown jewels, your most sensitive data, either inside the organization using endpoints, on-prem, also on the cloud. We'll have a deep dive into some of the new look and feel, how you can use Azure Information Protection across various products. We'll have plenty of demos to cover today to keep you busy with and interested about our new features. I hope we'll have enough time to cover them all. And we also talk a bit about our roadmap, what we've been doing so far, what is coming next in the future. So I hope you'll all be interested and keep you excited during this session. So let's have a look at how a typical organization looks like. You all know that you're using sensitive data. Your end users are using sensitive data on the day-to-day. For instance, I can go to Salesforce, download the booking results for my next quarter, download it to my endpoint device, then share it to my colleagues, either using Outlook, maybe put it on SharePoint, maybe send it externally. How can I make sure that my most sensitive data is always protected, that I always have control of what's sensitive to my organization? My crown jewels are always protected. How can I track it? How can I revoke it if needed? How can I make sure that it's only been used by the people who intend to use this information protection? These are main challenges that you as CISOs, security admins, or anybody who is concerned about the security of your organization should have to deal with on your day-to-day. And day-to-day, as you know, plenty of organizations pretty much encourage your end users to use various platforms. It can be Windows, can be a Mac, it can be on an Android or iOS. Data travels inside and outside the organization, crosses the organization boundaries, and you have to be in full control in order to be able to track and make sure that the most sensitive data is being used by the right people. So these are kind of the main challenges that you have to deal with. How can you deal with them today? So part of you might ask, if I'll ask you, how many in this audience can raise their hand and say that they have full control in their data and they fully know who has been using it? I wouldn't see too many, and if there are, I bet I can challenge you and ask you, do you actually know who has been using it in your mobile devices, on your on-prem? What happens when the data is being shared externally or externally? Do you have actually rules to prevent this data from being shared externally to using third-party solutions? And once the data goes there, for instance, I just uploaded documents, put it on Dropbox or Box or any other third-party solution, and now it became like a shadow IT problem. How can I make sure that these kind of actions do not happen? And if they happen, I have full control into those actions. So in order to be able to design it carefully, you first of all need to identify or even to define what sensitive information is. How do you know what sensitive information is? How your users, how the employees in your organization can better utilize your tools or the tools that you provide them with to identify sensitive information. How can they label it? How you can classify it? Can you help them classify it more efficiently? Once the data is classified, can you tell where do you have in your organization GDPR data? PII data, PCI data, or any regulated data of interest, and so on. So these are the main questions that we are going to deal with today. And I'm going to show you a few demos of how better, after having this session, you'll better understand how you can answer them in your organization. In fact, some of the questions that we heard also for customers who are already using our product is, all right, I'm using Azure Information Protection, but I'm also using O365. I'm also using Intune. I also have data on Box or Dropbox. How can I make sure that I created a policy, and I can make sure that this policy is going to be active across all these different workloads? I do not want to go and create one security policy for endpoint devices, another security policy for third-party clouds, and another one for O365. I want to make sure that I create one policy, deploy it easily, and all these different workloads can take actions upon my policy. So we learned that. Another very common question that we hear from customers, I have sensitive data within my on-prem servers. I'd like to migrate my data to the cloud. Let's say that you want to put it on SharePoint, on any other solution. How can you make sure that your crown jewels are protected? So before putting your documents which contain sensitive information data, such as PII or credit card, you like to make sure first that this data is already protected before moving it to the cloud. And plenty of other challenges. So I think that we're all quite familiar with these kind of challenges that can be, but what would be like a typical solution? So first of all, in Azure Information Protection, basically we're looking at 4 main pillars. So the first one is all about discovery. How you can discover easily what a sensitive information is within your organization. We come up with a language that your end users are going to understand. On day-to-day, not everyone is fully security conscious. You have in your organization people from HR department, finance department, legal department, and so on. They all deal with sensitive data on a day-to-day. However, they're less security conscious than you guys, and you need to provide them with the right tools of how they can easily label and classify those documents. So for that purpose, we came up with a very easy classification tool to use that your end users, even if they're not technical at all, they can easily use it. And we'll see that in a couple of minutes. Once the data is classified, you like to make sure that maybe other data which is being used, which is located in other locations in your service, is also classified. So you might need to come up with some automatic tools to classify that data as well. So you classified all the data in your organization. Now you like to make sure that this data, or at least the one which is highly confidential, is protected. So we need also to provide you with some very easy tools to consume so you can protect your data. And the most important piece, so after all your data is classified, some of that is protected, you like to be able to have full control and monitor what are the different actions that have been used by your users, how the data is being consumed, what kind of sensitive data is being consumed, do they have the right access to access this sensitive data, do you have control to know which kind of data is being basically cross the boundaries of your organization and how it's being used outside. All right, so before we begin that, let's start with understanding what is classification, or actually what is the label. So as a first action, we came up with a concept that allows you to classify documents using labels. So a label is basically a metadata. So each file in your organization now is going to contain this metadata, which is basically going to tell what is the classification of that document. Is it sensitive? Is it confidential? Is it highly confidential? Is it personal? So you can come up and define your own label taxonomy. So for instance, some organizations simply have a very flat label taxonomy. We simply just want to be able to distinguish classified and unclassified documents. This is very easy. Others have a more complex requirements. They like to have multi-levels of classification. Also, they like to take different actions. So for instance, most of the documents in the organization are going to be sensitive, so you can simply just classify them with general. A smaller minority of documents should be also protected. So for that case, you need a different label, which is going to include protection as well. Also, you might be interested to restrict the data from different users. So for instance, if you have users or part of your the financial team, they should have their own label, so they can label documents with that specific label of confidential financial data, making sure that people who are not part of this organization or not part of this team should not be able to consume that. Let me show you how it actually works. So I'll start with a very easy example. Let's just create a Word document. All right, so I'd like to start by creating a document. This is a new contract. And here we go. And let's just save it somewhere. All right. So now I'm an information worker. I just created a document. And I'm less security aware as you might expect me to be. But I know that you've been running all kind of education sessions within your organization, and you told me that I have to classify all my documents with a certain label. So first of all, what you have here is this is the toolbar when you can actually set the sensitivity of your document. So if you're an end user, you do not have to think that much about security. You simply just know that you're currently working on something which is sensitive or a bit sensitive. You can go and choose the security level or the sensitivity level of that document very easily. I would like now to show you another example. Let's say that I'd like to take some sensitive information from my previous contract. So here I have some PII data, personal identifiable data, which contains some the Netherlands citizenship service number, and I have some Belgium number, UK driving license number, and so on. So going simply just to copy that, and here's the new contract that I'm working on, okay? And I'm simply just going to paste that into that contract. Look what happened. As soon as I just pasted it and saved it, I got a pop-up saying, hey, it is recommended that your document should be classified as confidential and confidential. Why? Because you have this sensitive PII data within your organization. Quite cool. And you can totally do that behind the scene. Your end users shouldn't be aware about security at all. You can come up with predefined rules and give them the recommendation whenever you detected that the information contains those sensitive information types. But let me create now a new document. And let's call it just test2, all right. Yeah. This is yet another document. All right. But what if, for example, I'm going to copy highly confidential data? For instance, here's a document which contains credit card numbers. So I'm simply just going to copy those credit card numbers into that document. Now, you may come up with a policy in saying, okay, it is okay that users might use some sensitive data, and I'll give it up to them to choose if whether they like to classify it or not. But whenever a document contains credit card numbers, now this is part of a regulation. You have to classify those documents. Due to PCI regulations, you have to classify this document as highly confidential. So I'm just going to save it, and look what happened. I no longer get this pop-up saying, hey, would you like to choose to set it as confidential? No. That document was automatically classified as highly confidential only because I pasted this information of credit card numbers. Also, look that I got watermarks here saying this document is highly confidential. I got a header and I got a footer, and basically I can fully configure what's going to be the look and feel whenever I have this sensitive information within my document. So this is still old news. This is like 2016, early 2017. So we're keeping up. Anyone who had no clue about what Azure Information Protection is, now understand what Azure Information Protection is. And from the rest of this presentation, we're going to see some of the latest and greatest of Azure Information Protection as part of Microsoft Information Protection. This is the end user experience, okay? So as you see, this is really easy, that you can come up and set the label, you can override the label. For instance, if I was wrong, we heard the case of a false positive when we accidentally identified just a serial number of equipment as credit card number, so you can go and override it if you need to. All right, let's go back to our deck. Okay, so the main challenge that we mentioned earlier is about data discovery. So we understand how we can discover data on endpoints. Basically, we let our end users to classify the data for us. But on a large scale, we need some other tools, more powerful tools that we can classify documents in a bulk, right? So for that purpose, if you have plenty of data which is on-prem, we came up with a tool called Azure Information Protection Scanner. The AIP scanner allows you to scan file repositories and to set this classification automatically for you based on kind of all set of rules and conditions that you can predefine. For instance, whenever you find credit card numbers, classify it as highly confidential. Whenever you find PII data, classify it as confidential, and so on. We also have the ability to do the classification on the devices by the end users. And we have another layer for the cloud with the Microsoft Cloud Access Security Broker solution, which helps you classify documents which resides on O365 or on SharePoint or on any other third-party solution who integrates with Microsoft Information Protection. And we'll see a number of examples of that shortly. Now I'd like to show you to switch from the end user experience for your information workers to the admin experience. How you can actually control what's going to be the label taxonomy within your organization. I showed you an example with different labels as personal, general, confidential, highly confidential, but you can create, obviously, any type of labels that you choose. So in order to do that, first of all, you have to go to the O365 Security and Compliance Center. So under O365, you'll have to go to classification, and under that, you'll have here labels. And from this section, you can basically set the label taxonomy of your organization. For those of you who are familiar with Azure Information Protection, so you had exactly the similar experience here from Azure Portal. Let me just enlarge it a bit. When you were creating your label taxonomy. Now, basically, we migrated all this label taxonomy from Azure into O365. And the reason is that we basically expanded the coverage of consuming those information protection labels, not only for endpoints you're using it native or using it from their Office applications, but also across various Microsoft products. So we're looking at having this capability in O365, on Exchange, on SharePoint, on Teams, and as we'll see, there are going to be other third parties that are going to use that as well. So let's switch back to the Security and Compliance Center. And so currently, I have a predefined list of labels that I already created. This is the default set of labels. So whenever you start from scratch deploying Azure Information Protection in your organization, you're going to have that list. If you'd like to create an additional label, so what you have to do here, let's call it confidential finance, all right. You can put your description here, just keep it the same tooltip. Now I can decide if I'd like to apply encryption, yes or no, of course. This is for the financial team, I'd like to apply protection. Now I can choose if I'd like to apply it on files or on emails or on both. So of course, in that case, I'd like to keep it both. I can also choose which users in my organization should be able to use it. In that case, I'm going to choose users from specific group. I can just type here finance and see that I already have two groups which belong to the financial team. So I'm going to add them. I'm going to do that really quickly for now, just that you get an idea. Here I can define content marking. As we've seen in the previous example, you can set the watermarks, the header and footer, fully supported from the Security Compliance Center. You can customize the message, of course. Okay, just put it here, confidential, and save. You can set an endpoint data loss prevention policy. Let's keep it for now. You can also dictate if this is going to be applicable for SharePoint sites and groups. You can create rules, just as we've seen earlier. Whenever a certain condition happens, you'd like to automatically classify that label. How you can create those rules? Very easily. So what you have to do is simply just choose a condition. So for example, whenever I have a content that contains sensitive information type, and I can choose from almost 100 different information types of interest. So for instance, I'm just going to type here EU, and you'll see that I can choose from, that I have a variety of sensitive information types specifically for GDPR for the European Union, such as debit cards, driving licenses, and so on. From the same menu exactly, you can choose also credit card numbers, social security numbers, or any other PII, financial, or health information type of interest. This can go even more complicated if you'd like to choose all kind of settings. For example, how many instances of the same occurrence is required in order to trigger to fire the rule. What is the confidence level that is required? And finally, you simply just create the policy. And now I have a new label which is called Finance Confidential, and I can apply it for specific users within my organization. So only them are going to be the ones who are going to consume that label. Now, what you can do with your labels. So it's not only about creating those labels, but it's all about creating the enforcement of what you can do with that label. So I'm going to show you an example. Okay. Needs better internet, probably. So I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to go into the data loss prevention section. And here I already created a policy, so you can see various policies around, where is it coming? Okay, it says connected. So in the data loss prevention policy section, you can basically create various policies of interest in your organization. For example, in what cases would you like to apply a label? In what cases you'd like to take an action on that label? So for instance, whenever the data leaves the boundaries of your organization, you should do that. For some reason, it's not loaded, but I already created the policy, so actually I'm going to show you the impact of that policy. So let's go to my Outlook. I'm a user of Dell, and basically I'd like to create now a new document. Okay, and let's call it some docs with credit card numbers. Okay, I'm going now to attach a document. Okay, this is the same document that we've seen earlier, which is basically nothing except that we have some patterns that match credit card numbers. So far, everything is legit. I might be sending this document internally, so there's nothing wrong about that. But now I'm going to send it to a Gmail account. Okay, look what happens. Basically, for those of you who are sitting behind, it's going to be a bit difficult to tell what happens. So I'm going to resize it a bit. But I got the policy tip. That policy tip tells me, hey, this message appears to contain sensitive information. Clicking on Learn More, I can see that I've been sending a document which contains sensitive information, which contains credit card number, to somebody who's outside the boundaries of my organization. All right, I can do something with that. I can now choose a legit normal user would stop here, But let's say that I still like to send that email. You think that it went through? No. I just got now some notification saying, hey, message was blocked. All right, why it was blocked? Because that document contains, here's the actual attachment, here's the actual content of my mail, and I can see that it conflicts with my organization policy. It also contains some European debit card numbers and so on. If I actually switch now to the data admin view, okay, I'm starting to get all these kind of alerts. Let's go here. Okay, oh, it's here under other. Okay, and I got all kind of warnings here that basically say that something went wrong, and I can go there and go into my, actually go directly to the alerts section, and other alerts dashboards. I can view the alerts and see that there was some issue here with somebody sending, with sensitive data exfiltration. And the reason why I could detect that is by simply by giving me the option to create those policies using the sensitive information that we've just used. All right, and the beauty of this solution is that it can live totally transparent within your organization. So whenever your information workers are just doing legit work, nothing is going to happen. You'd like to have the minimum intrusive way to stop them from doing what they should do. But whenever something that they're doing is violating one of the rules, you can easily monitor that, track that, and also set an alert or actually block that action from happening. All right. Okay, so we've seen the user experience. We've seen the admin experience. Now, what I'd like to show you, this was released quite recently, is the ability to have the same functionality also across multiple platforms. So far, you could do that only on applications, Office applications running on Windows. 2 months ago, we released exactly the same functionality also for Office apps running on Mac. So for instance, this is a screenshot taken from Mac. You can see the same label taxonomy here, right on top, where you can choose the label of interest. This is a screenshot from an Excel spreadsheet running on Mac. This is from Outlook. This one is from iOS. Okay, was released very recently as well. On a PowerPoint running on iOS. This one is Outlook running on iOS. This was not released yet. This is still in preview. Will be coming out as general availability during later this year. Same goes for Android. So the beauty is that no matter which platform are you using running Office, you can get all the benefits of label taxonomy, of label classification on your applications. But the vision doesn't stop here. So we understood why is it so important having it on Office applications, but now look deeper. So what we've done with Microsoft Information Protection is that we enhanced the capability to consume these labels now across various products within Microsoft. So we have it for SharePoint. We have it from Windows Defender, ADP. We have it from the Microsoft Cloud Access Security Broker. We have it from, as part of the integration with Office 365. And we have it for Windows Information Protection. And all kind of different products now can easily consume the information protection taxonomy. You can use the same policies that you defined under the Security and Compliance Center and can actually take actions. So this is really, really powerful. I'd like to show you another example now of how this is done on Windows 10 endpoints. So basically, with Windows Defender ATP, Windows Defender ATP has announced public preview of using Microsoft Information Protection SDK. What does it mean is that whenever you have an endpoint which is running Windows Defender, they are also protected with information protection, and they can actually also take the power of Windows information protection, which is called in short WIP. So for instance, if you have a sensitive information, and you have Windows Defender ATP enabled on that endpoint, whenever you copy that sensitive information and that document is labeled as sensitive information, as sensitive, and you, for instance, paste it to your Twitter account, or you simply just copy it and paste that file into a USB card, your Windows Defender ATP can actually block it in real time. So it actually leverages the power of Microsoft Information Protection labels, and they can take actions automatically just due to the fact that that document was classified. So this is really, really powerful solution. Currently in public preview, will be GA later this year. Here's an example when we simply just copy the document, open the Gmail account, dragged it into your Gmail account, and Windows Information Protection can actually block it right away just because it contains sensitive information. All right, so that was an example of how you can use it from your endpoints. I'd like now to show you, basically, I'm sure that all of you are using mail applications in order to send and share documents within your peers. But what would happen if you'd like to share a sensitive information with someone outside your organization? For instance, you're a bank and you'd like to share sensitive information with your customers. You're a health institute and you'd like to share health information with your customers as well. We'd like to give you a very easy way to use and to share sensitive data, legit sensitive data with your users, making sure that they'll be able to consume it even if they're not using Microsoft solution. Let's go back to our example. So we'll open, okay, here's again my Outlook. And now I'd like to share a document. Let me share it with John again. I'm going to choose John. I'm going to choose the Gmail account of John. And let's call it a PR announcement. And say, hi, John. Here is our PR announcement. All right. Okay, never mind. You got it. Please review. I'm simply just going now to attach a document on my desktop. Here we go. But I'd like to make sure, because this is extremely sensitive. It's not confidential. It's extremely sensitive. I want to make sure that this document is going to be protected. So only John is the person who can actually consume that document. So we integrated a button here, which is called Protect. And from this button, you can choose what level of protection you would like to apply. By default, it's called Do Not Forward. So that means that John is going to receive that document, but John wouldn't be able to forward it or to copy it or to print it. Maybe this is a bit restrict. Maybe I'd like to change its permission and simply just encrypt it. So I just chose encrypt. That means that the document can be consumed only by John. Nobody else can consume it. But once the document has been opened, John would be able to do with that document whatever he wants to. I'm going to send it now. All right, document is sent. And now let's go to John's inbox. Okay, not there yet. Let me try it. Here we go. Just received an email from Adele with the title PR announcement. Look, I'm here at Gmail, all right? Gmail is not aware of Microsoft Information Protection, okay? Actually, they are fully aware of Microsoft Information Protection, but they do not want to integrate with Microsoft Information Protection, as you might imagine. So what you can do, can John still consume my sensitive data? You'll find out in a second. So I'm going to open that document, and we'll see, hey, we just identified that there is a document which contains protected information Okay, obviously you can brand it with the colors of or text of your choice for your organization. Also, there is an attachment here. That attachment is .rpmsg. This is a protected document. So if I'd like to consume it from my Gmail account, what do I have to do? Simply just clicking on this button here. And that would basically take me into Microsoft Information Protection portal directly. I have to sign in with my Google credentials. I've done it just before this session, so probably it's going to remember them from my cookies. And here we go, and we got the email content here, and I got the attachment, which is protected. Can I consume it? In order to consume it, again, I do not have any protection tools on John's device. So I'm simply just going to click on it, and that one is also going to be opened from Microsoft Information Protection portal. And here we go. I can actually see the full details of my PR. You find it cool? You are quiet. Excuse me? It looks like a phishing email. Phishing email. All right. This is all about PR announcements. They are a bit fishy in a sense. Okay. Okay, so we've seen an example of how you can send information, how you can protect information from various ways. Now, I'd like to show you, we mentioned earlier that the same label taxonomy can also be used by other products of Microsoft. So for instance, if you'd like to classify documents which resides on Salesforce, on Box, on Dropbox, and so on, for that purpose, you'll need the Microsoft Cloud Access Security Broker. So far, the MCAS solution wasn't aware of Microsoft Information Protection labels. Now they're fully aware. So for instance, let me enlarge it again. So whenever you create a rule, for example, of exporting data into Box and allowing MCAS solution to classify documents on Box, now they can create a rule of, for certain conditions, what kind of label would you like to apply. Okay, this one I'm going to show you later on as part of the demo. But the beauty of this solution doesn't stop here. So obviously, you would expect that Microsoft products would be speaking the same language. But what would happen with other third parties? We've been integrating with various products and various vendors. For example, with the top leader DLP vendors out there. So we have ForcePoint, we have Digital Guardian, we have McAfee, we have Varonis. All of them are fully aware of Microsoft Information Protection, and that means that they can actually take an action whenever they detect a document which is protected. So if you'll be putting one of those DLP solutions on a gateway, for instance, and one of your end users would be sending a document which is fully protected through their gateways, they'll be able to open that document, inspect the content of that document, and then take actions based on that content. So we really help them empower their own solutions by being fully aware of what Microsoft Information Protection is, and by letting them also to classify documents. So any of the solution, any of the vendors that you see here, and we have more work currently integrating with or working with a work in progress to integrate into Microsoft Information Protection, are fully aware of the information protection taxonomy and can apply labels automatically as well. A very nice example is an integration that we just announced very recently, is about Adobe Acrobat. Adobe Acrobat also would like to be able to consume information protection labels and to apply certain protection. Remember the PR document that we just seen, that one of you here said that this is a bit fishy? Let me open this document, and here's the PR announcement. Let me just open it now with my browser. Okay. To be more aggressive. And I just get this message saying, hey, this is protected, but cannot be consumed. Why? Because my browser is not fully integrated with information protection yet. However, if I'm going now to try and open it with Adobe Acrobat, Let's see what happened. Here we go. Adobe Acrobat easily opened my document. And actually, if I'm going to click here on this icon, I can get more details about the protection of that document. So I can see that it's been protected by Azure Information Protection. Here, I can also get information about what kind of protection was applied. Am I allowed to do printing? Am I allowed to copy the document? Am I allowed to share it with others? And so on. This is really powerful. I hope you'll find it useful in your organization as well. And as we continue our work, we are going to expand this integration with more and more vendors. In fact, already today, we have more than 50 different security vendors who are currently integrating with Microsoft Information Protection or about to release a GA version of their product very, very soon. If we have here in this audience vendors from other companies who would like to integrate, please talk to me after this session. I'll give you all the details that you need. This is really, really easy. In fact, you can also search or Bing or in Google or any search engine of your choice for Microsoft Information Protection SDK, and you'll get the full information of what's required in order to consume the information protection taxonomy. All right, so far we've seen various aspects of information protection, how it can be consumed by your users, how it can be automatically classified by Microsoft, how it can be automatically classified by any of our vendors. But the most important part, in my opinion, maybe because I'm the PM who is in charge of this, is how you can actually monitor those actions, how you can tell where the sensitive information is within your organization. So let me switch into Azure Information Protection Analytics. Is there anyone in this room who is using Azure Information Analytics? No one? All right, so I really hope that after this session you'll start using it. Let me show you what is it about. So we'll start with the landing page. Okay, can you see that at the back? Yeah, all good? Excellent, I think all right, so first of all, the landing page of Azure Information Protection gives you a high-level view of how documents are being consumed and used within your organization. You're not going to be here too many numbers because this is my personal lab, but you can imagine how this environment looks like in a live environment, and I can tell you it's really, really busy. So for instance, you can see how many documents have been labeled within your organization, how many of them have been protected, how many users are using information protection from how many different devices. Also, it gives you a nice breakdown of what is the label taxonomy, how many documents your end users are using, and classify them as general, as confidential, as highly confidential. By which applications? Do they apply it from Outlook, from Word, from Excel, and how frequently they are being used. But so far, this is quite basic. This is just a high-level view of how your product is being used and consumed within the organization. Let's take a look at a more interesting and more deeper view. So for that purpose, we have the activity logs plate. The activity logs give you a true power of understanding what kind of sensitive information is out there and by whom it's being consumed. So for instance, I can choose and can slice and dice this view for a particular user, by a particular file name, for specific activity, by labels of interest, devices, or certain applications, also risk. So for instance, let's take a look at what kind of actions been used by my user, Candy. Simply just going to tap here the name, and I can see that Candy is basically, let me enlarge it a bit, so you can also see that. And here are the different actions. I can see which files Candy is accessed. I can see which files she actually managed their sensitivity. In that case, she upgraded those documents. I can actually filter it, and let's search for only at label downgrades, because that might be a bit suspicious, to identify files which used to be labeled as highly confidential, and now they are not. So I can see that here's an example of a document called vendor data. Might be a suspicious activity that currently that document is no longer classified as confidential. Let's take a look at another example. I can choose specific activities or interests by an actual application. So let's take a look at what my AP scanner came up with. I ran Azure Information Protection Scanner for automatic classifications. And now I have here are all the different files that my scanner found. Clicking on a document would basically give you all kind of information about the document itself, where it is located, who is the user who's been using this document, the actual path of that document. Just actually want to give you another example, which is going to be more interesting. Oh, hold on. Okay, so let's just take a look at the actions by my scanner and pick that one, for example. So after running my Azure Information Protection Scanner, I can not only tell what the document name is, but I can actually have a deeper inspection into what kind of sensitive information that document contains. So for instance, this document here, AP scanner identified that it contains credit card numbers, it contains German driver license, and another part of GDPR data as well. So that basically would help you tick that button of saying, hey, now I know where my GDPR information is. In fact, you can even configure AP scanner not only to tell you what kind of information types it contains, but actually tell you the actual content. So for privacy reasons, this box is disabled by default. So only for those of you who are interested to have this information, you'll have to check that box and say, okay, we are fully aware of what does it mean. But what it means after you check that box is that now if you open the credit card number piece, you'll actually be able to see the actual credit card numbers in those documents. And you can search for specific users and to know what kind of data they have been consuming into that specific level. Last but not least, so we've seen the activity blade, which gives you, this is more like an investigation tool that you can search for specific activity by specific user or specific device. But what like if now you're a CISO and you'd like to have an overview of where your sensitive data resides within your organization? So for that purpose, we developed the data discovery blade. Clicking on data discovery gives you a posture of what kind of labels do you have within your organization and what kind of sensitive information they contain. So you know exactly how many documents within your organization contain credit card numbers, European GDPR data, and so on, and you can also tell where they reside. So for instance, if I'm going to filter now my information here and choose, for instance, let's take a look only at credit card numbers. Okay, and run that filter, now I can find all the file repositories in my organization that contains credit card numbers. You'd like to look at the specific files? Very easily. Simply just clicking on that, and now you get the full list of files which were identified that contains credit card numbers. Let me show you another example. I'm sure that many of you happened to you at least once that you created, that you have your usernames and passwords, and in order not to forget them, you just paste it into a Word document and saved it somewhere because you knew that you're going to use it just for the next day or so and delete that document. And you tell me you won't. 99%, I would say even more than that, but I'll try to be not that strict. In vast majority of the cases, that document would remain there with the username and password out there, and that means that if accidentally you copy that document and put it in an open share, somebody else would be able to access that document. Let's see an example. So we integrated credential scanning capabilities into data discovery. And now if I'm going to choose each one of those, we started with those ones which are related to, relevant to Azure, but we are going to expand it into the ability to be able to identify usernames and passwords in general. And let me filter that. And now I can see locations. So actually I have one file repository, which seems to contain one of those sensitive information types of interest which might contain sensitive credentials. So opening this one, Here I can simply just click on that one, and I can see that that document was identified as it contains public setting passwords and Azure Document DB auth keys. And here you can actually get the keys. And the power of this tool is that not only by generating those alerts, but now you as data admins can basically or periodically run these reports and identify the data owners and warn them and say, hey, we just identified that under your file repository, here are the different files which contains credit card numbers, and you should take care of them. And I'll tell you that by running it at Microsoft, we're basically giving exactly the same tool before giving it to do. We're using Microsoft as a lab, obviously, and we were running that on our public shares. We found some very, very sensitive information with usernames and passwords on some documents. And due to that tool, we were really able to revoke it. So my bet is that if you run it in your organization, you'll be surprised what kind of sensitive information you can find.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are those actions done by the administrator also logged?
Can you please repeat it?
The actions done by the administrator.
Yeah.
So looking at credit cards, are they also logged?
Yes. We are going to, yes. So currently those actions are logged from Security and Compliance Center, okay? If you're asking specifically about the actions that you see from this view here, these ones are still not logged, okay? So all the actions that you're doing from the Security Compliance Center are logged under Office. The ones that you have just conducted here are, actually, what I said is partially true. It's currently logged as, we know what the action is, but currently we haven't opened it yet to customers to consume. But this is coming on our roadmap in order to also show you what kind of what kind of data is being exposed to which admin. Last thing that I'd like to show you. Any more questions, by the way, about the monitoring capabilities that I just showed you before we jump to the next topic, to the last topic, in fact?
I've got a question. Can you scan images? For instance, I've got a photo of credit card in a document.
Very good question. Currently, so actually that would bring us to the next slide. Currently, OCR capabilities are not supported yet. However, this is coming on our, in the near future. This is definitely on our horizon. And we'd like to be able to detect data also from images and make it fully available from the data discovery. So I'll start with what's been released so far and what's coming next. So we've seen unified labeling, how you can create information protection from Security and Compliance Center. We've seen the native labeling support. We've seen the information protection SDK that would help you as security vendors who are not, who are working externally, but still would like to consume the information protection data to take it. We've seen the examples with Adobe, and we've seen how you can basically identify GDPR data by using the tools that we have today. On our horizon, you asked about OCR capabilities, absolutely there. Some additional capabilities that we'd like to add to Security and Compliance Center in order to be fully compatible with the Azure Information Protection solution. We're working on releasing information protection on more products. For instance, SharePoint Online today is still unaware of the information protection labels. There is a work in progress there. There's a preview available. It will be GA later on. We're going to expand more the DLP story and giving you a greater DLP solution also to your Office applications. Similarly to the example that I just showed you from Outlook, you'll be able to do the same from your Word applications running on the endpoint. And finally, we're going to give you those capabilities also around data discovery on specific files with specific with specific labels from SharePoint, OneDrive, and so on. So this is about it. This is the content that I wanted to cover with you. Let's have some open questions. Do we have some time? Yes, please.
Is it possible to manually add reminders for
Can you please repeat it louder? Yes, yes. So Very good question. So the question was, is it possible to add or create more information types, custom information types of interest? So the systems come predefined with nearly 100 predefined information types. If you'd like to create your own custom information types, for instance, you're working on a top secret project, which you call it Project X, and we'd like to automatically be able to identify those specific keywords, you can create your own regex expression and be able to tag that way. Okay, so in order to create, okay, so currently for end users, the main assumption is that end users, that information workers are less security conscious than users and admin. So we come up with the ability to create those predefined labels. We do not let use an end users, an information worker, to create that on the fly. If you have a request that you'd like to create those, like a new label, so you'll have to contact your admin and ask the admin to create it for you. And the reason for it, or the rationale behind this decision, is that in order to make those labels effective, you do not want to let your information worker simply just to create labels, because that means that they are not going to be attached to any DLP rule yet. So there is one person, the admin, who basically attached those labels into rules, and they are in charge of making sure that all the ones which are created and classified as confidential can actually also take actions on that. You're welcome.
Also, scan and label existing data?
Yeah. So the example that we've seen earlier with Azure Information Protection Scanner basically allows you to scan file repositories. That means that any file repository, which is a type of SharePoint on-prem, for instance, or any file repository which can be accessed via CIFS, you can basically create. Actually, I can show it to you. Let me jump here. So here is the configuration screen of the AIP scanner. So from the configuration screen, you can basically, I created here a profile. You can create a number of profiles, and you can actually dictate what are the locations, what are the file repositories of interest that you'd like to scan. So you simply just create a repository here. Here, these are the different files. You can create a new repository. You can actually dictate if you'd like to scan this repository and only as in discovery mode, meaning that it will not classify the documents, but simply just let you know in the discovery screen, hey, I just found those locations, and here are the sensitive information that we detected. Or you can run it in enforce mode and actually classify and assign a label to those documents. You're welcome. Great question. Okay, so regarding the licensing piece, we opened Azure Information Protection Scanner in discovery mode, also for the light license, for the Azure Information Protection P1 or for the EMS E3. So you do not need any premium capabilities in order to run your scanner in discovery mode and to go to the discovery screen and to identify where your sensitive data resides. However, if you'd like to classify it, and you'd like to automatically classify it, so any automatic classifications would require the premium license. If you're doing that manually, if your end users would like to classify it manually, they can do that with the E3 license. If you'd like the scanner to classify it automatically, this is a powerful solution that requires the E5 solution, E5 license. Yes, please.
Running as a thought process of Microsoft product. If I apply surface induction on ATP, will it break Azure IP?
If you're using Windows Defender ATP, does it break the Azure Information Protection?
Yeah, for example, to prevent Office applications to run big processes. Azure IP is running as a thought process.
Okay, great question. So they are fully aware. The question was if Windows Defender ADP, if it is running on an endpoint which is also using Azure Information Protection, will it break? So we designed it that way that they're fully aware of each other. The Windows Defender ATP would be able to consume the information protection labels and basically to send in events, while Azure Information Protection would be running on the same endpoint, giving your end user the ability to classify documents manually. All right, guys, thank you very much.